So this is a movement guide focusing on the Stinger's new secondary fire mechanic, which is essentially using the crystal shards here as stepping stones. Now, as you shoot them into terrain or into the floor or whatever, they do actually last for about 10 seconds. So you can set one up and then have an exit strategy planned for yourself if you like within that 10 seconds. But as soon as you hit one of the crystal shards, they explode, sending you up into the air as well as your enemies. And with this, you can have some interesting properties as well, such as climbing walls, getting out of really tight spots, and giving yourself some movement speed buffs. Now, when it comes to lining up that perfect shard jump, I always like to aim sort of dead center. This is about as high as you can jump. So I like to be able to jump on top of the shard and bounce correctly and get out of there all the time. But if you fire too low, as you can see, you won't get enough height to escape it. And if you fire the shard too high, if you can't touch it, it won't boost you. Now, even if it is slightly above you, it will still boost you up, providing that you touch the shard, like so. Not only is the shard jumping great for those vertical sort of heights, but it's also great for picking up your speed as well across the map. So right now I'm just showing you a dodge, wall slide, and then wall dodge mechanic. And this takes us about this far in terms of distance from one ledge to the other. But if we add in a shard jump in there, we cruise through the map so much quicker and we get so much height and extra velocity. And also an interesting mechanic is set in place is that it resets the wall slide. Now usually you can only wall slide a certain distance, but the shard sort of resets it like you've hit the floor again. So you can continue on wall sliding, and if you can continue on firing the shards, you can essentially do what I like to call the Spider-Man technique. As you can see here, I can get all the way up to the U damage here on the map arrays, and it takes a while to sort of master this technique, and getting the right angle, as you can see in the first person view here, is quite difficult. If you get it ever so slightly wrong, you bounce away from the wall or you stop your forward movement velocity coming in, and it takes a while to get used to. Essentially, it's a hard technique to do and definitely not the most practical either, but you know, the single shard jump here that you can see now is really useful for getting around maps quicker, and I thoroughly recommend that you try it. Now, one of the major benefits of using the shard jump over the impact hammer jump is the amount of damage it does. So the shard jump only does 12 damage, whereas the impact hammer does 25 for the lowest form of jump. And if you charge it up to the maximum, it costs 40 damage. So in some instances, the shard jump can be a lot better, providing that you can be consistent with it. So for instance, this jump here that you just saw me do, I can always be 100% consistent with it and always do, you know, the minimum damage. Now, in some instances, this isn't always the case. You know, it's going to be better to use the impact hammer as it's more versatile, it's more consistent. It's just a better weapon for doing trick jumps with. And when it comes to doing trick jumps, essentially why you do them is to take away items or get to certain points of the map quicker than your opponent and take them away. So you always want to be doing it on the first attempt, never having to retry it. Otherwise, it defeats the point. You're just not going to get the items you need. And if you fail it because of a cheaper cost, even though you could have done it every time with a hammer jump, but you thought, yeah, I can do it with the minigun, no problem, and you fail it, you're going to kick yourself in the teeth if you could have just gone like that. So always play for the consistency game. If you can always do something 100% consistency with, you know, the shards, then go for it. Go for the more difficult jump. But if you can't, just admit defeat and use the impact hammer, because it is probably the best trick gun out there. There are some jumps that the Stinger just outright rules over the impact hammer, such as this one. If I want to get up to the link, I'll wall jump, shoot the wall, and I can Stinger up. Now when I try this with the impact hammer, I actually fail it a lot more, which is unusual because the impact hammer can do pretty much all the same jumps as the Stinger can, except for the spider climb, which I showed you earlier. That's the only exception, and the Stinger can't do the old school rocket jump style jumps either. It just can't do it, as you can see here, whereas the impact hammer can. It's more versatile. It's just generally a lot safer to use for your trick jumps. And trust me, always go for the percentage plays. Always go to be more consistent when you're trick jumping. Anyways, guys, that's the end of this lesson of shard jumping. I hope you enjoyed it. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, all that kind of jazz. It really helps. And there'll be another lesson pretty soon. I'm doing how to aim on the link gun and also the stinger coming up next. And I'm going to leave you with some clips of some trick jumps that I did with the shard jumping.